I'm so thankful I'm finally doing this podcast again because it's a creative outlet that I actually have control over. Today's guest is the wonderful Logan Riley Bruner, who you may know as Fred from season 4 of Stranger Things. If you love the show, please make sure to leave a review wherever you're listening. Now that I'm not working at a wedding venue anymore, I don't actually have a literal job, so it's an interesting time and this will help out. I'm intrinsically motivated, but also some extrinsic things will help ease the process. All right, welcome to the show, Logan. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Tristan. Thanks for having me.
Dude, of course. This is so exciting. I've tried not to be too much of like a stalker because I try to keep the interviews as like first time meeting as possible, but I've stalked a little bit of you because one of the cool things I saw when I was researching you the first time is that we ended up having like such a similar 2021, like you did
Yeah.
FBI. And what was the process like when you were on FBI?
I mean, it's interesting. It was like my first procedural that I had ever done. I'm so used to doing comedy that like drama was a super fun process to kind of be a part of. It was
Yeah.
good. It was good to get to have that experience and to be a part of something that was kind of a machine that had been moving for a while. And how did you feel when you were working on that?
Similar. It was actually really cool. Did you film Stranger Things before or after FBI?
Before I filmed Stranger Things in November, December of 2020, and then I think I filmed FBI in like May or June of 21.
I also filmed Stranger Things first, but Stranger Things was the first like big show I've ever booked after like auditioning for years and years and years, as I'm sure
What a fun
every
show to do, yeah.
I know, exactly. FBI was interesting because I got on set and I was like, oh, I deserve to be here. 'Cause I had this like confidence because I
Yeah.
actually had gotten the ball rolling. So speaking on that, I was surprised. You've been in a lot of pretty big shows. Like you've had a pretty
Yeah.
significant career. When did you start acting?
Like as a thing that I knew I wanted to do, I think I was like 16, but I started like doing it when I was 10 or 11. I've been working for a really long time, but I feel like over the years I've slowly like paid my dues and done the process. And so
Yeah.
kind of be in a place now with Stranger Things where it's like it feels like it's launching me into this whole new arena. To have people now be like, "Oh my gosh, he came out of nowhere." It's like, "No, I didn't. I was
Yeah.
here."
Do you kind of love that you've been able to kind of explore that process and develop a process while doing big stuff, while getting those big paychecks without being this huge, like, I think everyone can relate to doing something in your performance that you just cringe at after when you
Yeah.
watch it back. Is it cool to have been able to refine in like a very professional setting with while waiting for that like big explosion to come?
I was able to prepare for this moment, not only like as an actor and being able to make sure that my performance was the best possible, but just as a human being, like being
Yeah.
able to have a catalog of work already behind me and like all the experiences I've had working with people, the process of just like growing up in the industry and I don't know, learning how to navigate not only the kind of networking that this industry requires, but the social media that has become expected. I studied marketing and writing in college, and so to be able to kind of
Okay.
have things behind me as I take this kind of big step has been a real help.
First off, I love your general essence. I know that's a weird like compliment to give, but you
Oh,
just
I
have
love
such a
that.
bright like, you'll have the people that are just like positive to be positive, but you just naturally just radiate with this to be a little pretentious, effervescent light. I've been like reading your podcast, reading. Oh gosh. See, it's probably
Reading that
obvious.
podcast.
It's been a little bit since I've done an interview, so I'm kind of
Oh, it's fine.
anyway, all that to say, a big like surprise that I had, and I think this just comes to the interesting expectations that people have of like the industry. When you were on the Bells and Whistle podcasts talking about how you're still working like a couple of jobs, I remember when I heard that being like, how he has this like resume. How does he have to still do this? And I was curious, is that a product of being in New York and it being expensive? Is it a product of just always needing to stay busy with how up and down the industry can be?
I think for me, it's a product of New York and just a desire to continue creating. I've been really lucky the past couple months. I've had a couple things really hit in ways that if my goal was to just like live and get by, I would be fine, which is a huge blessing and not something that a lot of actors get to say. I have to take that step back and kind of recognize the privilege that I have in that. I'm also in a place where, like with Black Wolves, which is the production company that I started with my best friends, we're constantly pursuing new things. And so in order to continue doing those things and comfortably like live and be able to like get the things that I want to do just to have like a comfortable life in New York, I've like continued working my normal person job, as I call it. I call it that because I like don't want, I've already had people recognize me at that job. And so
Yeah.
it's an aspect of like wanting to keep those lives separated. But that has been an interesting process of just like, yeah, continuing to work and continuing to go to a normal job where I'm just doing a regular like sales thing, kind of having just in the back of my mind like all the creative projects that I'm working on myself, and then all the creative projects that people have kind of reached out to me and had me audition or brought me in to be a part of. There's a definite break apart dichotomy right now where I feel like I'm about to take that step into being able to do this full time, which is what I've kind of always dreamed about doing. But I'm like right on the cusp of it. I've like got one foot in the air as I'm like, come on, we're almost there.
I've noticed I've been in like a very similar like phase with that, where I feel like I'm right in that transition period between like still having to do other things to supplement income without 100, but also being like, but I'm like getting those big opportunities. This is starting to happen. Should I just leave everything and go straight into this and trust whatever the world wants to give me is gonna kind of happen, or should I keep that groundedness? And it's been very interesting navigating. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the social media explosions, because there's so much that comes with that. I know you've talked about before going from you've been on some big shows to like this being this like huge outcry that is very tough to navigate. How have you been navigating that?
The last show that I did before Stranger Things was Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is like, it's not a small show. That's not like, oh, I did a little thing on the show.
Yeah.
I was very lucky to be on that. It's an incredible show. And I did 4 episodes of that. I did more episodes. Stranger Things, and I got maybe like 10 followers whenever that show would come back up. Would be people being like, I loved you as Lance. Like, I had some interesting scenes and that was great. And then Stranger Things happened, and I went from I think like 400 followers on TikTok and 1,800 on Instagram to 37,000 on Instagram and over 100,000 on TikTok. I don't say that to be like, I've got so many followers.
Oh,
it's
no,
like,
I get.
This is a weird thing to have happen, to suddenly have like the concept of 100,000 people is bizarre in and of itself, but like the concept of all of those eyes just suddenly being on you has been a very weird experience. And I've just kind of tried to take the things that I know not only about marketing and just like how to run a brand and how to run a business, but also just the ways that I've seen other actors, celebrities, artists that I've really liked kind of take their platforms and use them and navigate audience. There's this weird parasocial relationship that starts to happen between like performers and audiences. Well, I think I've definitely been navigating a world of like being appreciative because I want people to know that like I appreciate the love that they give me, but also not ever getting into a space where someone can turn around and say like I'm friends with this person. I don't know, there's a layer of difference between interacting with someone that you respect as a performer and being like, I love your work and I think it's so amazing, and like I want to get to know you as a human. And I think I've tried to keep my humanness for the people that are like in my life. I don't know if you felt the same way about like just kind of the process that's been happening. I know I've watched you do a lot of really cool stuff with with all your two diaries and all of that. So it's been really cool to watch your perspective as well.
It's exactly like you said. And also at the same time, I've been balancing that realization that authenticity is the only way to connect with anybody. So balancing too, like building that authentic, I hate using this word, but I'm sure coming from a marketing background, you understand brand.
Yep.
I mean, we're basically in the process of establishing a brand. And so it's very tough when your brand is yourself to have the boundaries like you talk about, where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I am being authentic and honest about how I'm feeling. I'm being vulnerable in public, all that kind of stuff. How do I make sure I don't give too much of myself away? I had a weird, interesting like circle because I feel like everything in life is a circle where you're basically you're going on this journey and realizing I was supposed to just go back to my roots of where I was. Like I did this whole journey and learned other things, but it's all going back to, I like to say, the innocence of childhood, because I feel like childhood is the thing that everybody misses so much because it's the most genuine they ever were. It's the least they've ever cared about other people's perspectives of them. All that to say, going back from like, okay, I'm being authentic, I'm putting everything, shit, I've put a little bit too much out. How do I kind of reassess and do the same thing while having the proper boundaries that you've talked about? The interesting thing is that the show hasn't really pushed my character at all. It's been really kind of fun. A lot of my friends have been like, we want to hire you for like our PR guy whenever we do something, because I've been doing everything just kind of myself, just trying to figure out like the easiest way to navigate it. But speaking of like performers that you admire and respect, I have to ask this because I saw that you were working on Vox Lux with
Yes.
Natalie Portman, and
Yes.
I would be remiss. My girlfriend's like all-time acting idol is Natalie Portman, so I have to ask how that experience was.
I worked on it because the movie's split into two sections, and she plays the older version of the character who I am involved with. I don't know if people have seen the movie. There's a very, very traumatizing scene at the beginning of the movie. I'm a part of that. Brady is a brilliant director. He's fantastic, and I think he put together a really, really great team that told a really, really interesting story. Vox Lux was struck by a problem with marketing, and people didn't really know what it was and the story it was trying to tell. And it came out like right around the same time as Star is Born. And they kind of had similar approaches, but different perspectives on the same issue. And so I think that there was a layer of that that was kind of missed. But I loved doing that movie. I loved getting to work on it. And I think a lot of the work that I did there and kind of the learning that I did working on that process and the confidence that I got during that process is really what I was able to bring to kind of Stranger Things and all the projects going forward.
I think the reason that actors get their quote unquote breakout role is, of course, because, you know, it's finally having a resume so people feel more comfortable. But I also think it's the complete mindset shift where as soon as you get on that professional set, as soon as you start to see that you're making that progress, it's so much easier to see yourself as like worthy of being there. And something about just believing it as possible, it completely shifts your mentality in the whole auditioning process. I'm curious what ways your mentality shifted as you started booking more of those bigger projects.
No, I totally agree with you. I think I've talked about it with people who have coached me in the past, and then I've also just talked about it with people that I'm collaborating with and people that I'm trying to help. I mean, coming out of college and kind of doing this, I've had a bunch of friends who I'm like trying to help make their moves in the industry. I think there's a mindset shift. There we go. From I need this job to this is what I can bring. Understanding that like auditioning is the job that you're not paid for and getting the role is the vacation that you get to do where you get to go have fun. Being able to kind of walk into an audition room rather than like, please hire me, to instead have that perspective of this is who I am and this is how I think this role should work. This is what I'll bring to your production. And if you like that, then awesome. But if not, then I'll bring that to somebody else. And I mean, that's how I approach Fred.
Where we share a lot of similarities, specifically with like the way we got to Stranger Things, that highlights what you just said, is that both of us read for Carmen Cuba
Yeah.
multiple times before
Yeah.
because I think I remember you saying she actually specifically reached out to you, or was it a direct submission?
It was a submission.
Okay.
And also like I had been seen for season 1 and then I had gotten seen for other parts that she had done in other movies and then
Yeah.
this back around.
Where you read with them multiple times until finally it's like they're just figuring out where to put you.
Yeah. And I mean, once you start recognizing that you're getting called in by the same office over and over, there's a sense of like, okay, something's working. It's just not clicking yet. They just haven't found the right thing. And so like once you realize that those relationships are starting to be built and that like casting directors are starting to trust you is when you can kind of find that freedom and that comfort in those rooms.
So I'm gonna stick a pin into Stranger Things because I want to have it be this full circle moment. Because I have a lot of questions about specifically your process with that. Going back to how you've always wanted to be an actor since you can remember. Do you know what it was that specifically drew you to it? Was it just this, I don't know, I just love it and I don't have words to describe it, or something else?
My parents had both been in the industry, but they tried to like push me not to. So I think part of it's just in my DNA. I was in elementary school in this like musical theater camp. At the time it was called Rosie's Broadway Kids, but now it's Rosie's Theater Kids. It was Rosie O'Donnell's like theater collective.
Nice.
They did a program in my elementary school and I was working with them and my mom describes it that I like came home and I was singing and dancing and I've never stopped. And, like I was so in love with it and the idea of performing and taking on new characters and being able to tell stories. I mean, I played pretend until I was in high school and even beyond. I have always been somebody that let my imagination kind of run wild and always wanted to be in different worlds and taking on different personas. And so the ability to kind of be a kid again and just play pretend and mess around and tell fun stories is something that I've loved for a really long time. So it's kind of the thing that I feel like is going to just be my life from now on.
I started similarly, and this is the part of the show where I start projecting my experiences onto people to see how closely they fall.
Accurate? Yeah.
But it was just this thing I loved. And then there's like this interesting thing that happens where you start getting more and more and more involved with the thing you love, and it's like the trials that prove your love for it and prove why you're actually in it, and you have to do that soul searching. Did you ever have that moment where you were like, okay, why is it that this is just what I like? Why am I drawn to this so much? What is it about acting?
I don't know that I ever had my crisis of the heart, but I definitely had those moments where I was like, I've been doing it for 15 years at this point. Why this? Why are we coming back to this over and over? And I think just at the end of the day, it's been love and just the desire to take on new perspectives and new roles and tell new stories. I think I do recognize that moment that you're kind of touching on, that shift from like, I just like it because it's fun to like, I like it because I have actual reasons for liking it. That just starts to happen when you work on projects that you don't like and that like the experience isn't great and you're like, okay, I still did the thing that I like, but something about this didn't work. Coming out of those experiences, you have kind of two options, and the options are you stop and you say like, okay, this is something that I do for fun, but I only want to do it with people that I have fun with, and that like I'm going to do it as a hobby, but I don't need to do it. Or you come out of it and you say, okay, that was a bad experience and I want to like take what I've learned from it and move forward and continue to do this thing because I just can't, like, this bad experience aside, I can't stop doing it. I had a couple of those moments where I was like, I want to quit and I'm done. And then I did one project and was just like, fuck, I love this so much. It's just too, it's too fun. It's too life-giving.
Yeah, I love that. Sometimes it's just like, it's this like wave that crashes over you where you're like, you know, all the BS, all the trials are worth it for this moment right here. Like not even like this experience, just like this moment right here. Maybe it's one of those situations where as an actor you surprise yourself and you're like, oh, I brought something out of me I didn't even know I had. And maybe that's the wave. I think it's different for every actor. But are you from New York?
Yeah, I'm born and raised. I've been here my entire life, and it's something that I'm going to eventually probably leave. But I mean, for now,
What makes you say that you might eventually leave?
for a long time, I lived like in the middle of the city. I lived close to Midtown by Madison Square Garden, so there's just so much happening.
Oh, dang, yeah.
Now I'm someplace a little quieter, which is nice. I think that's helped a lot. But I think that I'm just kind of looking for a place where I can walk down the street and not have 100 people coming at me at all times. Thankfully, my new neighborhood provides that. There is a sense that like New York is just big and busy and fast, and it lacks space. There's no backyards. There's like your outside space is like a fire escape or a roof, and roofs are pretty rare. So I think there's definitely a feeling that someday I'm gonna want, like, I love pets, I love dogs, I love cats.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to have space for that. I want to have space for just like myself to go outside and not like have to curl myself up on this weird fire escape setup. I did that the whole pandemic, and it was great to have, but it's not the same. I'm in love with the work that I'm getting to do, and the fact that I live here allows me to do that work. And so you make the sacrifices that you make in order to continue doing the thing that you love. And I'll do that until I get to a place where it's like, okay, I can live somewhere else and people will ask me to fly and do things, rather than like I'm still working as a local hire in New York because it's an advantage that I have.
What college did you go to?
I went to SUNY Purchase, so I was like 30 minutes outside of New York. I wanted to be someplace close enough that I could still audition, but far enough away that I felt like I had some space. That's when I did Fox Lux and I did Maisel and Orange is the New Black. That's really where like all the TV and film started when I was in college.
You were majoring, you said, in advertising?
Arts and entertainment management, and then screenwriting. I've loved writing since I wasn't booking during high school, and I was like, I just need to make my own stuff. And so I started writing then, and I fell in love with it. So I wanted to go to school for that, and then just having the access and the knowledge of like, if I ever wanted to go into artist management or into branding or into marketing, I now have all those avenues that I can explore. Or if it's ever something that I need, which this year I really needed the marketing. So I was glad that I had that.
Yeah, and I'm sure it helps the production company you opened, Black Wolves. I never ended up going to college, but if I had gone to college, I would have gone for business because it's applicable in everything. And I do think that whenever you're able to put yourself in a position where you can create your own opportunities, I feel like everything falls into place because there's no longer all of this neediness for opportunities to come to you. That's why a lot of like the big actors, which I want to do one day as well, they have their own production companies so that they can decide what they're acting in and start producing stuff, so that it's not just, okay, I'm going to wait until someone calls. So I think you're on a beautiful path for that. I know you said you started it with your two friends. What was that process like of starting the company? And
it was great. I mean, me and Jacob, who I've known since I was in 6th grade, we went to middle and high school together. We were doing a like final project. We had written something together just for fun that we really loved. We started saying that we were a production company in order to sound more professional. But then we did this like final project that ended up being the first 2 episodes of the Black Wolves log. We brought in Jeremy because the 3 of us were going to college together and we were all hanging out all the time. And so it just felt right. Then we got to college and we started living together. And while we were living together, we were creating even more together. And so it's kind of just been a natural thing that once we were seniors, it was like, okay, let's try and make this legitimate. Let's try, and we've got all these projects that we've been really interested in. Let's do a real push to make this an actual official production company. I think the most exciting part about it is being able to look back at some of our early stuff and kind of not only see our growth, but show people that like, it's not just overnight. It's not like, oh, Logan was on Stranger Things and then they were famous. There was like 5 years where we just did stuff because we wanted to, and Logan was auditioning and Jacob was auditioning and Jeremy was auditioning, and Logan happened to get something first. That led to a couple other things that moved to a couple other things. And I'm just trying to be really transparent right now just about everyone wants an overnight story. Everyone wants to say like, this person came out of nowhere and how incredible is that? That happens. But there are also stories of people who just work really hard for a really long time and then they make it.
I know a lot of people look at me as kind of like this overnight thing because I'm just this actor in Texas that all of a sudden books this like big thing, and they don't, it's like you said, they don't see the 2 years of no representation in LA and then the subsequent 2 years of zero. Like I didn't even get a callback of any audition for 2 years. And I don't know if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point. I've been referencing that all of the time because the tipping point is essentially all about how we learn all of these lessons that are equipping us and getting us to this point that finally we learn that one lesson that clicks everything into place and everything just goes downhill from there. Almost every time you have an overnight success, it's because they have that one lesson that finally got them to that tipping point. And I bring that up because I know you said you started booking things in college. Do you remember there being like a specific lesson or a specific thing that was just like, oh, shoot, this is what I've been doing wrong? And then boom, everything just fell into place.
For me, it's also less about like doing wrong and more about just like finding how to be the most me that I could be. But I was in this acting class with an acting teacher that I really respect named Natalie Roy. She's incredible. I was this really confident actor and I'd gone in being like, I'm not going to really learn anything. That's like a touch up. I was one of the people that was working professionally. And so in class, I kind of had that work ethic. So most of my professors had just said, like, you're a really great actor. We don't have to worry about you. And so I reached a point where I knew how to act, but I wasn't really connected anymore. And so I did my first scene in her class, and she said, Logan, you're really great at convincing people who don't know what good acting looks like that you're a good actor, but you are across the street watching yourself do this part. So why don't you come back and do the scene and see how that feels? And that hurt my ego a lot, but
I'm sure.
I took it and I swallowed my pride. I went from being a very heady actor who was like, okay, I know how to play each moment, to doing all that heady work in advance and kind of knowing what I wanted to do with something, and then just kind of letting go and trying to just be as free and as in the moment as I possibly could. And I found that that's led to a lot of my success now, is that people have stopped saying, like, he seems stiff, or like, he seems like he's thinking too hard. And that's been a really exciting process, because I kind of feel free to make more interesting choices and to not really feel constrained by, like, okay, this is how the scene is supposed to sound. It's like, okay, well, what can I bring that is maybe me, or is maybe original to how I feel or who I am.
I love that so much. I had something so similar, and
Really?
I booked Stranger Things, and then I had a couple auditions, and then I didn't get a single audition for like, I think it was like 4 or 5 or 6 months after that. Okay, well, I'm not acting, so I'm just gonna kind of go to a workshop, see what happens. And my girlfriend recommended this foundational workshop with the Anthony Mendel acting studio all over Zoom. And I know you've seen the show. Almost all of my scenes are so heavy and dramatic, and like especially in like the shot collar scene, I
Yeah.
show a lot of that vulnerability. And I reference that because then I was in this class with, my teacher was Nina Rausch, who actually follows me, so she might actually end up watching and hearing this podcast. But
That's awesome.
well, the whole class was a cold reading class, because it was all about getting back in touch with who you are and honoring your instincts. And the interesting thing that I kept getting notes on, something very similar, is like, you're doing a good job, but you're not getting that vulnerability. You have, like, there needs to be more of that vulnerability. In my actor brain, I'm like, I literally am most well known for my vulnerability. That she can't be true. Then I had that breakthrough where I realized, oh, it's because this is a cold read class. I'm having to go purely off of instincts, and I don't trust myself. I like having this smoke screen to have vulnerability behind, so it's not actually me expressing that. Oh, I trust myself to be vulnerable if I'm not myself, but I'm not honoring myself. And that like clicked everything into place. So it's so cool to hear that we've had so many like parallel experiences, which is
Yeah,
really, really
that's
cool.
awesome.
Okay, so you had that breakthrough when you were in college. Did
Yeah,
you end up graduating from college?
I did. I graduated
Okay.
with the 2 bachelor's degrees, and I went and I did a play in Colorado, which was a really amazing experience. And then I came back and I auditioned for Stranger Things in October. Booked it December of 2019, and then they said, "All right, we think we're going to start filming your stuff in March of 2020." And at the time, that sounded great. And then 2 months later, it did not.
So you graduate college, you go do that play in Colorado, and then you come back. What is your mindset and mentality like? Because I know a lot of people, there's like this big, I've graduated now. What the heck do I do with myself? I don't have this like,
I think for me it was just a lot of excitement. I mean, I was doing my own stuff with Black Wolves, and like that was keeping me busy, but I think the feeling was like, okay, I'm finally out of this space where I have deadlines and where I have a bunch of projects that aren't really pushing my career because I'm doing like schoolwork, and all that time is now mine. And I was getting really great opportunities at the time. I'd come close on a lot of things. I'd been auditioning while I was in Colorado, and my team was saying that I was doing really good. I got back from Colorado like 2 weeks before I got the Stranger Things audition. I was only in New York without a job for like 2 months, which is a very rare thing as an actor. I've been very
yeah.
lucky. Pandemic aside, I've kind of consistently started getting work, which was not happening. Like in college, I'd book once a year, but then it felt like I got out of school and I just had all this space and kind of ability to drive all my attention into my work, and I had taken all the time during college to make my work the best I could, so I just kind of took off, and that was a really exciting feeling.
I've noticed in my life, everything I've booked was right after I quit something. Like,
Right.
because I've freed up my time to be able to, like you said, be able to purely devote, which is that laser focus. That happens. And then the pandemic shuts everything down. And especially
Yeah.
you being in New York, I know they were like hyper strict about it. I know you talked about how nervous you were that they would just recast you and not even bring you
Yeah.
for the show.
I always had a feeling that I was going to do it. There was always something deep down inside me that was like, this is coming. So I'm going to be fine. It's going to happen. But yeah, there was definitely a stress of like, everything's shut down. I can't do anything. I can't go anywhere. I mean, I really struggled because I'm a super social person, and like I
Mm.
like to be around my friends, and so not being able to be around people was really hard. There were like, my family was nervous that the part might get recast, and I of course had that like little anxiety, but I definitely just had a feeling that like it was going to come through. I was going to do this project and things were going to work out. And so I was kind of able to ride that up until we started filming. And once that happened, that just got me through the rest of the pandemic. It was like, okay, I filmed already. They can't cut me at this point. We're in it. And so I've kind of always had something to move me forward. So I feel like I've been really lucky that even in the moments where I felt stuck because I'm waiting, and not because like I don't have a job, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't wait for what's next, but it's around the corner. I'm not there yet.
During the pandemic, were you quarantined in your home? Were you part of like an essential business or?
Yeah, it was me and my mom. We were both on unemployment. We were both just locked down. I mean, we made it work. We had a fire escape, which was great. But I mean, other
Good.
than that, we watched a bunch of movies and a bunch of Netflix, and just tried to stay ingrained in all of the things that we love about the arts. And I was really lucky that her and me have very similar artistic tastes, and so we were able to kind of to find things to just enjoy and occupy our time. But we got through it, and now we're in a place where we can go back to the work and to pursuing the things that we love rather than just being stuck.
And I'm sure that was huge for y'all's like relationship.
She has always been a rock in my life, and so to have her to kind of steady me and help me get through that time, and to be able to help her get through that time was really great. We are still close. I mean, I live now with my roommates, my best friends, the Black Wolves gang, and so I'm kind of away, but we still have that close relationship, and we're still able to find that joy through the arts. And I feel really lucky that I was able to be with her, and that I wasn't just by myself like a lot of people were. So what was your kind of lockdown experience like?
I actually was part of an essential business. I was a mover at a moving company, and I was also living with my mom at the time. And I have a hard time like vocalizing this because I know how terrible of a time it was. The pandemic and living with my mom and my sister was like our time that we finally like actually started to bond. It took that acting class to fully realize just how much I've always suppressed my own vulnerability. And it was really cool to have that time where we're forced to see each other and talk to each other every day. And it allowed us to really be vulnerable and get to know each other on a true, real level versus just the, hey, mom, how are you? I'm good. How are you? And those kind of niceties that, are fine, but it was cool to have that like deeper connection with my mom. And it's been interesting because now I live with my girlfriend, so I'm not living with her anymore. And I'm curious what your experience is like. It's so weird when you move out of the house, like maintaining that
Yeah.
relationship with your parents becomes this like very proactive. It's so crazy when you go from seeing someone every day, they're your rock, kind of like how you and your mom were, to making that time to see each other
Yeah.
and going out. It's such a weird experience.
I think that because we had so much time together, we have such a solid relationship that like making that time just becomes second nature. I see her for like lunch or dinner once a week, and we get to catch up and we talk on the phone. And I feel like we have that kind of close knit relationship that I'm constantly, whenever we like go to catch up, I'll sit down with her and be like, I don't feel like I have anything to catch you up about. Like, I feel like you know everything that's going on. So this is just like we're having dinner, and that's nice. For all the craziness that technology brings, the ability to stay connected to other people and to be able to continue to be a part of each other's lives, even when we're not with each other, has been just such a blessing. And so I feel really lucky to have that.
Two mama's boys right here. I'm
Yeah.
a big mama's boy.
Love that.
I do have like some specific actor questions. So we're
Oh,
about to get a little, I don't know if you've seen Actors on Actors, but it's about to be a little bit of that energy. Your approach to entering this already established series, especially when it comes to like being Nancy's like new best friend, how did you navigate exploring this like relationship that's authentic to you while also honoring the show?
a lot of it was helped by the fact that I love the show. I had already kind of wanted to be a part of the world, so I understood it. The cast was so welcoming and the crew was so inviting that there was very much a comfort and a safety to kind of bring who I was to the show because I knew how the world worked. I kind of knew the areas that I had to play. The Duffer Brothers were really amazing and open to everything that I wanted to do and let me kind of have a lot of freedom with the character, but knew what they wanted and were able to kind of guide me in that area. And so it was comforting to have everyone else be so secure in what they were doing because I just felt like I could step up and know what I was going to get and just go from there and kind of contribute to that rather than feeling like you're all kind of figuring each other out and trying to make this thing work. It was a well-oiled machine that I was just like stepping in and being a part of.
The coolest part about being on a show like that is how much everyone genuinely like loves being there. Like so
Right.
much of that welcoming energy comes from just people are happy. This is like it feeds their soul to be part of something like this. And you're just walking on set and hanging out with some friends. I know you talked a little bit about like working with Jamie. I was so like fascinated working with him. It's like you said in the Scoops Ahoy podcast. He was so nice and like just kind of
Right.
grounded. He has this like posh British accent. And then when camera's rolling, he's like there. All of the lineup scenes, even when he wasn't on camera, he was giving me death eyes. It's always so cool when you work with an actor that is willing to give you
Yeah.
everything that you need. And that was the other cool part about like Matthew. He was just a genius of being a scene partner. So all of that to say, what were some of the ways that he was able to help you get, because I think I commented this somewhere, but I was so impressed with the way that you handled that like grave scene where, because
Yeah.
that kind of fear is always the toughest for me to play. What were some ways that you were able to get yourself into that? I know you listened to some Mumford and Sons,
Yeah,
but
I mean, I listen to that album, and the whole album is just like, this is it. Like,
yeah.
my soul is being cast to my maker. Like, it's so, like, it's them being emotional and heartbroken, and like, I really felt like that contributed to where Fred was at the time. But I mean, a lot of it is just allowing your body to believe what is happening. I got closed up in a box that I couldn't climb out of, and then I had someone who looked like a terrifying monster walk toward me. And I mean, Jamie is just so giving that every take he would give me everything that I needed, but
Mhm.
there's a definite aspect of just once you're in the situation, it's easy to commit to it because you're there.
Well, I was curious, what is for a scene like that your pre-take ritual? And what I mean is like it's like 10 minutes before you're about to get there. Is there any like body exercises you do, any mental gymnastics?
A lot of it for me is just pace and listen to music. I'll just try and really find that place for that particular day. One of the PAs was kind of like assigned to me because we knew it was going to be a really intense day. And so I would just have him like tap me on the shoulder right before we went. We would walk over. I'd still have my music going. I'd like pull one ear out so I could like hear what was going to happen, hand off my headphones to him and walk and we'd go. But also just like having the freedom to be able to talk to people and to be able to understand what you need to do technically, I think is really important. And so I try and avoid that like I'm only going to be my character, only call me like everyone can call me Logan on set, I'm fine with
Yeah.
that. So I try and maintain a distinction between like me and my character. I think 90% of the time you get all your energy from whoever's working opposite you giving you that energy, and the way to make a good scene is to just fuel each other. And so I really just connected to him and allowed him to give me what he was giving me, and it's not a huge push. All he really needed to give me was, I want to devour you. That's easy to push yourself against a wall and keep trying to move backwards when you can't. I feel like we have slightly different experiences in this, because you in the collar scene, I mean, you have like 10 other characters with you doing a long form scene, and then you have to be vulnerable. I had like a full day where I had multiple days where it's like, okay, we're doing Logan's death. So I had like a lot of support just in making sure that I was good and really protected in that kind of aspect, because I was the only one that anyone had to focus on.
All of the other actors with me were under 18, so they had to get them wrapped ASAP. We would basically have to film all of the kids' coverage before going to me on pretty much everything, which was beneficial in some ways because it allowed me to ramp into it and build into it, but it also made like stamina something that was super important. It was episode 2, I think, where it seems like you just had just dread after dread after dread. I'm sure that was so emotionally taxing. What ways were you able to keep your like emotional mental stamina for that kind of stuff?
A lot of it for me was just about the fun of it. Yeah, you're acting in a really dreadful way, but like they'd call cut and I'd be like, this is the coolest thing I've ever.
Yeah.
I'm doing, it's the kind of acting I love, right? I'm running, I'm yelling, I'm jumping, like anything physical, anything that I can do with my body, it's automatically going to put me in the right place. Everything had to do with my body. Everything was running or climbing or struggling or something. I didn't necessarily have the vulnerability of like sitting there and having to be vulnerable. I was very much able to propel myself using physicality, and then just find the excitement in the fact that like the mourners are terrifying and that's so cool. This is all makeup and it looks so scary, and I know that, and I can commit to it. But then when we're outside, I'm such a film nerd that I'm just like, this is just fun.
It's so cool hearing you say that, because me and you's characters are like completely different. And yet a lot of like what you're talking about, I experienced at the same time. Like I would try to find root in like the physicality. Film geek in me, seeing all the special effects they were doing, putting me up on wires, and I never had to go like 10, 20, 30 feet in the air. So I don't know how you did that. That's just crazy to me. There's already, I'm sure, so much just natural fear that you have. And then I know they told you could not move because you're dead and react to the fall. And it's just like, I don't know how you were able to do that. That's just so impressive to me.
Honestly, I think I was really blessed that that was my last day. All the raising and the lowering was the hardest stuff that I had to do. Because like you talk about vulnerability, like vulnerability is one thing. There's ways that they can make you cry. There's ways that they can give you kind of all the things that you need in order to put yourself in the right mental space. If I had needed, I could have been like, okay, can you guys like set up the shot and then give me like 3 minutes to just like really find my center, and they would have been cool with that. With physicality, it's just the limit of what your body is able to take. Wires seem really easy. Like conceptually, I was like, okay, they're just going to pick me up. They're going to put me down. They're going to pick me up. They're going to put me down. When you're on the road where there's no like air conditioner or controlled environment, it's hot. Hot air rises. So you're rising and it's getting hotter as you're going up. And then you start dropping. You're rising and then falling and rising and then falling. So you start to feel like you're on a boat. How long can I do this without either throwing up or passing out? How can I make sure that like I am still giving 100% every time and not just looking like I'm trying to not throw up or pass out? Both the stunt coordinator and the first AD were super protective of me. They were both very much like, the moment that you tell us you're tapped, and we will stop. But I mean, as an actor, you know that like they need the shot. And if you can't get the shot right now, then that's fine, but you're probably going to have to get the shot in a half hour. That was a lot of just like, I'm going to push as hard as I can. At the end of the night, I looked at the first AD and I was like, I have one. And he was like, okay, we'll do one and then you're good.
I had something similar on such a on a much lower stake, which is when Jamie is like holding me up against the wall, and I was having a tough time with that. So I can't imagine, like, I'm also afraid of heights. So
I am too.
Oh gosh.
I mean, they made sure that I felt super safe, but that first drop,
you can't be prepared for it.
But then once the first time you get caught, you're like, okay, I'm good.
Any other scenes that you do after that will feel like so much, just like, oh, I've been dropped 10, 20 feet in the air.
To falling this time. Cool.
I ask this to all of my guests just because I love seeing the nuances behind the fact that I've asked the exact same question. Even though I only have 3 episodes public, I've recorded like 30 episodes. I just need to get my perfectionist BS out so I can just get these released. I've not had a single person answer this the same way. What mantra would you say you work to live life by?
I think "you are enough" is a great one.
Mm.
But the quote that I keep on my wall, I got it in a packet of inspiring quotes that I actually got at an audition. It was like this office like kept this pack of inspiring quotes for artists. But it's by Mike Doley, and it's: "The path to enlightenment is not a path at all. It's actually a metaphor for the time it takes you to allow yourself to be happy with who you already are, where you're already at, and what you already have, no matter what." And so that's been
Interesting.
my path, is being happy where I am, who I am, with what I have, and then just allowing the universe to give me whatever it's going to give me next.
I mean, I guess it's not armchair psychologist, but it's just how I've like seen you and just our so this is a wedding venue. I'm only referencing this. I'll probably cut this out, but just so you know, like there's like so many flies around me because the caterers left their food.
Oh,
I'll
fun.
probably keep this in so if people see flies going around me, they're like, "Oh, he's a
They'll
disgusting,
understand.
stinky man." It's like, no, there are so many flies. It's so clear to me that so much of like what you do and so much of like where your motivation comes from is just channeling your joy. And I think that's why my first impression of you, I said you have just this naturally like bright energy, is because it's so clear that you're just following what you love. You're following what brings you joy. I know everybody has their dark nights of the soul. They have their moments where they don't feel enough. At least from the outside looking in, you're so clearly honoring who you are and everything that you do. And you so clearly are just you're spreading love, man. And I really have a big kudos to you. I love saying that because I think we can get in our own heads worrying that we're not doing enough or we're not doing this and that or we're behind in this way. And it seems like a big part of your personal ethos is just showing love, spreading joy, and you accomplish that. So
I mean, yeah, it did not come naturally. It's years of therapy. It's really working on myself and making sure that I'm just constantly in a place where I'm happy with me. I'm gonna be with myself more than I'm gonna be with anybody
yeah.
else. I might as well enjoy that time.
Since you brought therapy up, one of my like big takeaways in therapy is basically just a reminder whenever you're having a hard time finding that self-compassion, which is so much of the time we're resisting against our autopilot. We judge ourselves because we're not making the right change or we're not behaving in the way that we want to because we don't realize, well, no, that's just our natural instinct. And sometimes it just takes repetition to get out of that cycle. And the more you judge yourself for taking a longer time to override the autopilot, the more the autopilot ironically takes control because it's all really this elaborate coping mechanism that you have anyway. So the more you force yourself to hate yourself, the more you rely on coping mechanisms. And it's this
The bad
vicious.
cycle. Yeah.
I've loved talking to you. It's cool because this is our first like conversation we've ever had. So people get to hear us like bond and connect for the first time, which is always really cool.
And I'm sure based on our careers, this will not be the last. We'll
Oh
probably cross
yeah.
paths on every other show.
Literally, you have been in the only 2 shows that I've like professionally booked so far. So it's inevitable. You'll probably I only have like one thing that I'm like I have slated for 2023. I'm not gonna
Nice.
say it, of course, but I'm
You have
sure
all the
you'll
secrets.
inevitably you'll just appear on it. You'll like walk in and I'm like, oh, I didn't know you were on the show. You're like, oh
Hooray!
yeah. And we'll finally act in a scene together, which would be
That'd
really
be cool.
cool. So yeah, do you I don't like saying what's next because every time I'm asked that, I feel this pressure of like, oh, but is there anything that you're excited about that you want to send people's attention to?
I mean, Black Wolves is moving into year 3, our 3rd official year as a full company. I'm acting in things that I'm not allowed to talk about, so hopefully those will come soon. I'm on Instagram. You can keep up with me there, keep up with Black Wolves Productions. We're making a web series, which has been super exciting. We're
Heck
dropping
yeah.
I'm directing, which is a really great time. I've got a bunch of stuff that I'm very excited that's coming soon, and I can't wait to be able to share.
I'm going to put all the links in the show notes so people that want to go take a look at those, follow everything that Logan is doing.
Follow this podcast. It's great. This was so much fun.
Thank you. It was.
Stay for more.
Thank you so much, Logan. It was an honor having you, and I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. This is great.